Good morning. Welcome to online worship with the First Parish of Sudbury Unitarian Universalist. There's a button below this window that is the way that you receive our order of worship, so please click on it to follow along. Our meeting house has been a gathering place for our evolving congregation for over 380 years, a place where all are welcome, whether one is a longtime member or if you just found your way here this morning. Each and all of you are encouraged to safely bring your whole self to this forum, all of your respective beliefs, identities, gladness, and sorrows. Leave nothing about yourself behind. We are so glad that you're with us this morning. You, my dear friends, are most precious. So this morning, as we gather for support and in compassion, even though we're not sitting beside one another, we travel this journey of courage and faith together. This morning's reading was written by Rainer Maria Rilke. Though you have been warned and given plenty of explanations, reasons to do otherwise, you have persisted to claim a life of joy and justice, to carve out of this time, this space for the renewal of your own heart. Despite all the reasons, the resistance, fighting for your attention, luring you towards fear, you persist to practice gratitude for this day, for this life that has been given, this chance to begin again. And so let us gather that we might offer one another courage, strength, healing, hope, and this promise to persist in kindness, persevere in compassion, and prevail in a life that is for more than ourselves. Come, let us worship together. Please join me from right where you are in our unison chalice lighting. For the gift of this day and for our community, for our spiritual nurture and compassion, we give thanks. We light this chalice as a symbol of our faith. May our many sparks meet and merge in common and in communion of heart and soul. Let us open our hearts and our ears to glory in this morning's musical interlude. This morning, I want to share a reading with you. It's from this little book, which you can't really see. It's called 12 Steps to a Compassionate Life by Karen Armstrong. And before I do the reading part, I wanted just to call your attention to a term. She talks about the 4 F's, feeding, fighting, fleeing, and for want of a more basic word, reproduction. So with that, here's this morning's reading. In our perilously divided world, compassion is in our best interest. To acquire it, however, will demand an immense effort of mind and heart. Gandhi memorably said that we must ourselves become the change that we wish to see in the world. We cannot reasonably expect the leaders of our own or other people's nations to adopt more humane policies if we ourselves continue to live egotistically, unkindly, greedily, and give free rein to unexamined prejudice. We cannot demand that our enemies become more tolerant and less violent if we make no effort to transcend the 4 F's in our own lives. We have a natural capacity for compassion as well as for cruelty. We can either emphasize those aspects of our traditions, religious or secular, that speak of hatred, exclusion, and suspicion, or work with those that stress the interdependence and equality of all human beings. The choice is ours. So this morning, it looks like my sermon is about legacy, but it's actually about resilience. And it begins with a few thoughts that I've had. I remember the first time that I read Winnie the Pooh and how the stories of the 100-acre wood and the unlikely and very different friends who gathered and lived their lives together there called to something deeply within me. I wanted a 100-acre wood as a kid, and friends just like Christopher Robin welcomed into his life. Together, Winnie, Piglet, Eeyore, Tigger, the owl, and Christopher lived their lives fully, experiencing all sorts of moments, good ones, sad ones, thoughtful ones, and moments of being worried and afraid. Reading this book helped me to realize that it's okay to feel all sorts of things and to share them with your chosen family. To this day, I have a hand drawing of Tigger framed and hanging on my wall in my office. It reminds me that all of the moments that I have in this lifetime should have a little Tigger in them. T-I-double-G-R. So I began this morning with a quote offered by Christopher Robin, who explained, "You're braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think." During this time of social distancing, when we wonder about what might come next, times when we feel maybe just a little bit disconnected, let's just remember how important it is to find and create special moments together. Whether they are online or over the phone or from 6 feet away, let us hold one another in our hearts and minds, loving the quirks, the energy, and worry of those very special folks in our lives. You. Fair warning, I will be referring to the Zen of Winnie the Pooh, Eeyore, Piglet, and Christopher Robin to help us gain a little perspective and insight throughout this morning's sermon. At times like these, books like Winnie the Pooh should be required reading, bringing us back to places and lessons that are simple, straightforward, and resonate so deeply. When I think about the 100-acre wood, I think about something that Christopher Robin and all human beings are surprisingly good at, but are not necessarily mindful of this ability in the moment: resilience. Also known as grit, perseverance, persistence and endurance, determination, fortitude, stamina, diligence, and so on. Think about it. Throughout history, we humankind have faced a lot of challenges that required that we keep on keeping on. And some of this keeping on required that humankind change in order to survive and thrive. Even the very act of gathering online for worship this morning is our way of changing in order to ultimately stay together and thrive together. Winnie explains it this way. You find sometimes that a thing which seems very thingish inside you is quite different when it gets out into the open and has other people looking at it. So let's unpack this resilience thing and begin with a question. Have you noticed that humankind believes that resilience is somewhat of a solo project? It's not that we consciously defined it that way. It's just that we were taught from the time we were little until, well, today, the same thing was and is said in so many different ways. Pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. You're stronger than you think. If at first you don't succeed, try again. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. The cultural message is clear. Resilience depends on you, your individual toughness and inner strength. It's a solo act. And it's not just our culture, but our UU faith as well. We also prop up this heroic and individualistic form of resilience. UUs famously rejected the idea that human beings are depraved, sinful, and weak, and replaced it with the view that people are inherently worthy and strong. As one leading UU voice put it, our moral fiber is equal to all demands. It's the ultimate you can do it theology. Personally, I love that. Yet at our best, we don't stop there. We say two things at the same time. You can do it, and you don't have to do it on your own. I love that even more. It's all a reminder that while resilience has a lot to do with what is inside of us, it equally depends on what is between us. We are indeed a people of resilience. Forget solo act, think community choir. We survive our pain by having the strength to tell others about it. We find the courage to make our way through the dark only when we sense we're not alone. Internal and individual grit only gets us so far. Empathy, assurance, and love from others get us the rest of the way. Piglet asks Pooh, "How do you spell love?" Pooh explains, "You don't spell it, you feel it." I say this all the time, that we are all in this together. It's not something that we can logically hold fast to because it's something that we have to feel. I'm hearing that same we are all in this together mantra everywhere I turn. On the news, inspirational videos and posts, I think about these days that we are currently facing with the backdrop of our long human history, There is no doubt that this time right here, we are enduring a challenge beyond our reckoning. I'm worried at times. I'm guessing that you may be as well, but I'm also inspired to make the right thoughtful decisions with all of you in mind. I'm also intrigued and committed to moving forward, come what may. And I know that somewhere within me, in us all, resides humankind's ability to be resilient. We inherited it. It comes for free. It's part of our commitment and drive to survive. When we have faced hardship in our lives, loss and the resultant grief, and trust me, we are grieving right now. It is that same feeling of shell shock that we encountered in the wake of 9/11. It is difficult to embrace and understand how this could have happened and what might happen next. Piglet looks at Pooh worrying. Supposing a tree fell down when we were underneath it. Pooh, being the pragmatist, suppose it didn't. After a very difficult time in my life, I turned to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and her book on death and dying. I needed something, a guide to help me negotiate and make sense of what I was feeling. David Kessler, who worked with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross on her book on grief and grieving, explained that there are 5 stages with regard to grief, and they are similar to the stages of dying that Kubler-Ross wrote about in the 1960s. They are denial, shock and disbelief that the loss has occurred; anger, that someone we love is no longer here, or the way of life that we have known is now different; bargaining, all of the what ifs and regrets; depression, sadness from loss; acceptance, acknowledging the reality of loss. These stages are not to be used or seen as a way to tuck messy emotions into neat packages. These stages do not occur in order, but they are the places that we will travel on this journey. Over the years, Kessler has realized that there is an important 6th stage to grief that I want to share with you today. That although for most of us, grief will lessen in intensity over time, grief doesn't really end. But if we allow ourselves to move fully into this crucial and profound 6th stage, called meaning, it will allow us to transform grief into something else, something rich and fulfilling. Kessler shares that through meaning, we can find more than pain. When a loved one dies or when we experience any kind of serious loss, the end of a marriage, the closing of a company we were working at, the destruction of our home in a natural disaster, or even our very sense of safety is lost. We want more than the hard fact of that loss. We want to find meaning. Loss can wound and paralyze. It can hang over us for years. But finding meaning in loss empowers us to find a path forward. Meaning helps us make sense of grief. When circumstances are at their worst, you can find your best in this moment. You can keep growing and finding ways to live a good time and have some fun. Some days even be joyous, one enriched by the lessons of this time. Eeyore, one of my favorite characters, explains woefully, the nicest thing about the rain is that it always stops eventually. I ask myself, as a person who thrives on deeper meaning, where will we find the silver lining in all of this? Could this time that we have out of our normal day-to-day be an opportunity for insight, for transformation? I wrote a blog post earlier this week that asked, what do we fill our days with now? The planet and COVID-19 have caused us to reset our lives in so many ways. We now have this opportunity to seek real balance without commuting or distraction. Could this be a time to live the life that we never expected we would be able to? Time spent with our loved ones, teaching children the important stuff of life, like compassion, kindness, and sharing. Could this be a time where we live a life of pastoral existence? Our home becomes a farm where life is simpler. Sprout seeds, grow plants, water, weed, learn about what it takes to be self-sufficient and yet interdependently connected. I ask myself, didn't we want to use fewer paper towels anyway? And those paper bags? fewer of everything really, to shop less. Maybe this is our opportunity, taken out of our daily grind, to see life differently and to allow it to change us. Step out of the race and into another place, maybe of respite and calm and family. These moments that we are in right now, as fear-filled as they may seem, may be just what the doctor ordered to help us find that place of Zen, calm, Tao, Sabbath. Can we find peace when we feel like our health and safety is a bit out of our control? None of what we are seeing should in fact be this way. We seek people to blame, and honestly, that does not help us one bit. Fretting about what is going on around us does not help us to find peace. It actually causes us more distress. The good news I introduced earlier, we humans, we're resilient, and we have many skill sets at hand, but it begins with putting aside our angst and remembering that we have the ability to learn, to grow, to become self-aware, and that we are great at finding and making meaning in our experiences, including this one. If we take the time to look beyond our fear, our denial, our anger, our bargaining, our depression, all important places to acknowledge, but then pass through, moving towards a place of acceptance and meaning making. Rivers know this, explains Pooh. There is no hurry. We shall get there someday. It is important to be mindful of our survival instinct that keeps telling us to practice social distancing. It reminds us to wash our hands and to clean, clean, clean in the midst of a pandemic. But that part of our brain that gets stuck, paralyzed by fear, doesn't serve us well, especially when it urges us to overthink, to worry, or to get frustrated, harshly criticize one another, or stop seeking connection, support, or purpose. During this time of social distancing, I've been thinking a lot about young adults on spring break and what I may have chosen to do when I was that age. Might have been a little scary. I encountered one of those "I am asking for a friend" posts on a university website. Here's the question: how do I pursue peace in the midst of a pandemic? What that website explained, I thought was helpful for our inner younger adults. It encouraged towards shifting to and strengthening other paths besides fear that facilitate peace in the midst of scary, frustrating, and devastating circumstances. Some of the suggestions may seem familiar, such as mindfulness. Observe the data around you and the thoughts, feelings within you without judging or evaluation of whether those things are good or bad. Just notice and breathe. This creates a pause long enough to choose the most helpful response rather than reacting impulsively. Learning. Stay curious. Research the facts and increase your understanding of the issue at hand. Examine the costs and benefits of various choices before making decisions. Self-care. Identify what will be most supportive to you in this moment. Do you need to create a task list or a new routine? Do you need to let your task list go? Increase rest instead, physical activity, change the ways to engage in social connection? Caution. Share your feelings, experiences, needs, and desires with trusted supports in your life. Meaning. Identify your values and examine whether your actions and your routines in this very moment, today, are aligned with your values. We are familiar with these methods of finding peace, right? They are just a few of the ways that we can find and cultivate that soft and safe place within. What I have realized in my own daily life is that developing a routine is crucial. Developing a way to focus my actions on my values is also crucial. For those of us working from home, especially, our work can become all-encompassing, crowding out what is most important in this moment, and be all-consuming. And yet, we need, for our health and well-being, to take time away from work. So here are some other thoughts to consider. first and foremost. Please don't forget to share the love with yourself, your whole self, mind, body, spirit, and soul. Take time to go out for a walk, work out, meditate, do the things that bring you back to center, help you feel grounded and alive. Then spend time with the kids or the dog or the cat or the ferret or the bird, or talking with your loved ones via Zoom, Skype, Facebook, or FaceTime. There's a ton of different ways to do this. Just this last Friday, we, Mindy's and my family, decided to get together on FaceTime and play Monopoly. It's a smartphone application, and it was a blast. We had fun, we laughed, and we felt connected. I had at one point acquired Park Place, but unfortunately could not get my hands around Boardwalk. Anyways, is it the same as being in person with one another? No, but it was important for us to make the effort to laugh, normalize, while ensuring one another's health and safety. Eeyore explained it best. After all, one can't complain. I have my friends. As my reading for this morning, I chose Karen Armstrong, the guru of compassion. Her important words for us to hold close as we move into the next day and the next moment. In our perilous, divided world, compassion is in our best interest. The choice is ours. We may feel like we do not have a lot of control right now, but we do have choices, especially with regard to how we treat one another. Don't forget to show the love and patience first. Remember the please and the thank yous that mean so much. I loved what Reverend Katie Lee said last week, that people may not remember what you said to them, but they will remember how you made them feel. How do we want to feel with one another? Winnie offers deep wisdom as well. Love is taking a few steps backward, maybe even more, to give way to the happiness of the person you love. Think how life could be different if we chose to reach out to those whom we communicate with on a regular basis and truly share a moment together where we tell them that they are important to us and that we care about what they might think or might be doing or might be feeling, appreciating one another for the moments that we share. What more important energy or sentiments could we sow into now, into this moment? A dash of kindness, a peck of thankfulness, a bushel of compassion, and a yard of love. Then water, nurture, weed when needed, and watch our world, the 100-acre woods, the home of Christopher Robin, Pooh, and the gang, grow, evolve, and flourish. It's up to each one of us to believe and to remember, day in, day out, that we are all in this together, and that this moment and the next will pass, and we will gather again on the other side together. I invite you to take a moment in silent meditation and prayer. Let us join in saying our unison extinguishing of the chalice located in your order of worship. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Good and loving people, our time in online worship has come to an end, so I share some words of wisdom with you. Resilience is not easy. Starting over is never simple, and yet it is the work that leads back to life. So trust that the seeds of hope are taking root, even when the ground is cracked and dry. Believe grace is hiding just around that bend. Know there is always a way forward, even if it's not the one you wished it would be. The lights never stay off, friends. The world is too wild for that. Life never wants to leave us behind, for there is something unruly and loving at the heart of it. That is always sneaking in from the side, wanting us to take its hand and to dance. So be on the lookout, beloveds, as we go on our way. May it be so. Blessed be.